And now I'd like to introduce Sibley Simon, who's a tech entrepreneur. And he's going to discuss how community volunteers are turning a partially neglected historical cemetery into...
So imagine it's 1850 and we're here in Santa Cruz. The gold rush is on, California is about to become a state. How many people do you think live in Santa Cruz County? Guesses?
500.
Only 640 people. But I'm here to tell you, those were 640 tough-ass people. I'm going to tell you about a few of them. So this is Abigail Arcan. She wanted to take a shortcut to get to California and beat those other 49ers. And she, with a whole bunch of people, got stranded out in the middle of this vast desert. She was one of the only ones to survive. And when she got through and looked back at this desert, she said, "Surely that is the Valley of Death." They still call it Death Valley today. This is Isaac Graham, notorious figure. He's known for creating the first water-powered sawmill in California up in Felton and Graham Hill Road. But he couldn't have done those things if he hadn't helped depose the governor of California, been thrown in jail by Mexico, sued Mexico, and won a lot of money. Wrongful imprisonment. I don't know how he got away with that, but he was a tough guy. Some of you may know the story of London Nelson. He was a slave in Tennessee most of his life, given freedom, moved out here, owned a little house where our downtown post office is now, and when he died without family and descendants, gave the value of his property to start permanent public school in Santa Cruz. And then I've got Hiram and Ruth Imus here. Now they look tough as well, but I can tell you they're maybe the toughest of the bunch. They spent a year walking all the way from the Midwest to Santa Cruz, but during that year, Ruth turned 74 and Hiram turned 80. And they weren't coming to Santa Cruz to retire, they were coming to farm. So this is their farm. I know it's a little fuzzy, but does anyone know what's out in the middle of this field today? Any guesses? Yes, I heard it. Costco. So they farmed here, but they had this land next to their farm that was on a north-facing hillside, kind of shady, couldn't grow anything there, so they donated it to become Evergreen Cemetery. So you might guess my theme, which is all those people I just mentioned, are only a few of about 2,000 really incredible stories that we have of people buried at Evergreen Cemetery. Can't even begin to tell you. One thing I didn't mention is that the first burial at Evergreen Cemetery, I mentioned Abigail Arcan. Well, during that hike across Death Valley, she was pregnant. So unfortunately, our first burial is a 19-day baby, Julia Arcan. So unfortunately, there's this giant gap we have between this amazing historical site that's got all this history locked up in it and what a lot of the site has looked like, which is this. About 18 months ago, there were big portions of the cemetery that looked like that. So now, when we see that gap, we can start crossing that chasm a little bit, and it's easy just to get in, start pulling some of those vines, get a lot of volunteers, you know, we get out all the branches that are everywhere, turn them into wood chips, and start making paths out of them, and, you know, just dig into it. So, I mean, that's great, and we're doing it, and there's harder problems. One problem is that Evergreen Cemetery over these years has become known as a little bit unsafe also because of the people living there, or drug dealing going on there. How do we deal with that? Well, one way we attacked both those issues is made a partnership with the Homeless Services Center. And every Monday for almost a year and a half, we've had homeless volunteers out there working at the cemetery. I was trying to get here on time, 5:30 today, and I got stopped by a homeless guy on the street who really wanted to talk to me about some of the stones we've been uncovering at Evergreen and how to put them in the right place. So, you know, we're making progress. We've got all kinds of community volunteers. We have companies that do this kind of work, like Lewis Tree Service that's helped us out. Companies that don't do this kind of work. Before Plantronics came out, which is this crew here, they asked me very seriously, will there be any spiders? So, we're out there every week, and not only, you know, pulling the vines, but we're uncovering headstones. And so that's unfinished. It's very unfinished. We'd love to have more help if any of you want to come out and help us. And we come out sometimes on weekends too. But a real unfinished work in my head is, what is this place trying to become? Where are we going with this? It's easy to clean it up, but what's the awesome idea it could be? Evergreen Cemetery is never going to look like this. It's not flat, for one thing, and it's, you know, it's sort of creepy built up into this hillside, which is awesome. But beyond that, this place we're in, this museum, has been becoming a community center, an interactive, a participatory museum. What's a participatory cemetery? All these people are in cemeteries. Yeah, it's funny. They did this Hollywood cemetery where they show movies, but this is around the world. There's people who picnic in cemeteries. What can we do there? We don't want to just put up a sign about this history, but we want people to experience it and contribute. One thing that does happen, it's the longest standing tradition I know of in Santa Cruz. This year will be the 144th year that the Memorial Day celebration for Santa Cruz has happened in our Civil War plot at the cemetery at Evergreen. So there's a little bit of that going on, but I think there's way more that could happen. I'm going to narrow down and give you one example. For about 90 years, Santa Cruz had a Chinatown. And rich history, tragic history, incredible work that was done by the Chinese here. And this is the last Chinatown right across the street, where you enter into Trader Joe's. But it's not there. It was flooded out in the 50s, never rebuilt. The last piece of physical place for that community is at Evergreen. We have this oven, we call it, where people's personal effects were burned when they died to send with them in the afterlife. But like all the rest of the cemetery, it's fallen apart. Most of the headstones are gone. So, what should we create? This is somewhere else for inspiration. But of course, we're thinking about making what's the memorial we can create there to inspire people to learn about and know about this Chinese history in Santa Cruz. But we want to do more than just have a physical monument. How do we get people to experience some of what that culture was like? To want to learn more, to contribute, because there's a lot that's not even known or recorded about Chinese history in Santa Cruz. So that's just an idea, and I want your help coming up with what this vision could be. In the upper right-hand corner, last thought, that's a real participatory museum, well over 100 years old. It's the Pet Cemetery in France, where Rin Tin Tin is buried. And so I just had this whimsical idea that we should make a pet cemetery that everybody would come to at Evergreen. So that's our thoughts about it.